Jai Jirendra. Let's start with the prayers as usual. Welcome everybody. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sappa Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sappa Pavapanasana, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sappa Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sappa Pavapanasana, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadam Havai Mangalam. Namo Orientanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vutsayanam, Namo Loe Sappa Sahunam, Eso Panchanamukkaro Sappa Pavapanasana, Mangalanancha Sabbe Simpadam Havai Mangalam. वीर सुरसुरा सुरेंद्र महितो विरमुदा संस्कृता वीरेण विहत स्वकर्म निचयो वीराय नित्यं नमः वीरातीर्थमिदं प्रोतमतलं वीरशुभोरं तपो वीरश्रीकृति कीर्तिकान्ति निचय श्रीवीरभद्रं दिश कमठे धरणेन्द्रस्य सूचितं कर्म कुरुति प्रभुस्थुल्य मनोवृत्ति पार्श्वनाथ श्रीस्तुवः अंगूठे अमृतवसी लप्तितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांचित फलदातार. Welcome everybody. We carry on with our series on the 10 great Shravaks in Bhagwan Mahavir's Sangh. The text from which we are referring to, as we discussed in the first lesson, was something called Upasak Dasa, meaning the 10 Upasaks. Today we will talk about the third person mentioned in this series of 10. A lot of it is similar to what we heard last week regarding Kamdev Shravak. What we would like to do today is just listen to the story, which is quite brief, and then maybe go on to discuss something more about Shravak Dharma and something deeper about Dharma itself. We talked about the 11 Pratimas last week. I did say to you all that I would have some slides today, but unfortunately, I don't have any slides ready. I'd started preparing, but haven't got around to finishing it. But the story is quite short and similar, and I think it will give us an opportunity to discuss face to face what other questions you might have. In the first lesson in this series, we talked about Anand Shravak and introduced the topic of the 12 vows of a Jain householder, man or woman, and what those 12 vows are. Then we talked about Anand Shravak, who was one of the most prominent Shravaks in Bhagwan Mahavir Sangh, and we heard about how he one day went to listen to Bhagwan Mahavir, who had arrived in the outside the city where he was living, and he listened to Bhagwan Mahavir's description of Dharma and became very keen on accepting the 12 vows of a Jain householder, and he does that. And we saw the details of the vows that he had taken. And then we heard that he goes home and pursues his wife, who comes to listen to Bhagwan Mahavir as well and accepts the vows of a Jain householder, as a Shravika. Anand Shravak then, as we heard, after many years, progresses in his practice, and towards the end, he gives up his household and lives outside in a Pausat and carries on advanced practice there. And towards the end of his life, he takes uh, Sanlekhana, meaning a vow to uh, not eat or drink until his life ended. And during that time, we heard that he achieves Audignan, and we heard about his meeting with Guru Gautam Swami, who had come to see him, having heard that he has taken Sanlekhana. And we also heard that at that point, Anand Shravak mentions to Guru Gautam and asks him that I have achieved such widely, uh, I've achieved Audignan, and I can see vast distances in all directions, meaning he can actually see what is happening in those all directions. Gautam Swami felt that yes, Guru has somebody who is not a monk can achieve Audignan, but not to the extent that Anand Shravak was describing. And they have a short debate about that. But then, because Anand Shravak is very uh, clear about the extent of his Audignan, Guru Gautam Swami goes back and asks Bhagwan Mahavir, who confirms Anand Shravak's experience and the extent of his Audignan. So Gautam Swami comes back and apologizes to Anand Shravak, saying that he was wrong and Anand Shravak was right. So we discussed various aspects of this particular incident. In the next story, which occurred about the uh, same time and in the same sort of city, was the story of Kamdev Shravak. Again, we heard about the extent of his wealth, and very briefly, we heard that, like Anand Shravak, he takes the vows after listening to Bhagwan Mahavir, and then after some time progresses on to advanced practice and starts performing the different pratimas of a Shravak. And during one of those practices, when he's in deep meditation, they, having heard some praise about Kamdev Shravak from the Indra in Devlok, that somebody down on earth called Kamdev Shravak is so steadfast in his practice that even a Dev cannot actually move him from the firm position that he has accepted for himself. This Dev comes down to test him out, and as part of that test, he makes Kamdev Shravak suffer terrible punishments, which Kamdev tolerates very peacefully and with great equanimity. And the Dev then abandons his punishment, everything that he had laid out, and with the power of the Dev, this was something that he could make well experience, but also ensure that the person did not die. So Kamdev Shravak suffers all that, and when Bhagwan Mahavir arrives there again, Kamdev goes to meet him. Bhagwan Mahavir praises his particular steadfastness, and cites that as an example to the any other Muni Bhagwans about how great even a Shravak can conduct himself during such difficulties, and urges the monks and the nuns to look at this as an example of good practice. The third story is about somebody called Grihupati Chulunipita, and this is based in the city of Varanasi. And the story goes that he again was a very wealthy businessman who lived in a very happy and um, prosperous life with his wife, whose name was Shyama. There is a description of his wealth as well. And it says that he had about uh, 8 Hiranyakoti on in savings, 8 Hiranyakoti in on interest to other people, and he, in keeping with his prosperity, he had about 8 Hiranyakoti that he used in his household to maintain the level of luxury and wealth that him and his family were used to. And he also had a large amount of cattle. So listening to or reading about this, it gives us an insight into the kind of life that wealthy individuals in those times were living. And this is probably true of a lot of the very rich cities um, that were scattered around India around that time. So Kamdev Shravak once goes to listen to Bhagwan Mahavir, who had come to Varanasi. And it's mentioned here that Bhagwan Mahavir had come to a place called Kaushak Chaitya. And he accepts the vows of a Shravak. And then, progressing on his practice, he also goes and lives in a Paushatsala when he has sort of retired from his worldly life. And as part of advanced practice that he is conducting, he stays in the Paushatsala and carries on with that practice. Again, for him as well, another Dev who is not very happy that a mere human being is performing such severe penance. This particular Dev is quite kapti, and he does not want to accept that there are people who can do such advanced religious practice. What it says is, એક માઈ અને મિથ્યા દ્રષ્ટિ દેવ ચૂલની પિતા ને તેના ધ્યાનથી ચલિત કરવા માટે પિશાચનું રૂપ લઈ ઉગાડી તરવાર સાથે આવ્યો અને બોલ્યો. So he comes down with a huge sword, ઉગાડી તલવાર, and he takes the shape of a very frightening monster, or pisach. Pisach is like a bhoot, but who is solid and looks like a giant. And he threatens him and says that I want you to abandon your practices. I want you to abandon your vows. And if you don't, then I am going to kill your eldest son in front of you. So Chulnipita, the Shravak, is deep in meditation, is hearing what the Pisach, the Dev, is telling him, but he is steadfast and he doesn't lose his concentration. And the Dev tells him that if you don't abandon your vows, I'm going to bring your son here in front of you, kill him in front of you, and then I'm going to boil his body in hot water in front of you, and then I'm going to throw the meat from his body and the blood from his body onto you. And he repeats this threat 2 or 3 times. Pita is unafraid and he doesn't shift from his meditation. And the Dev then shows him that he's brought his son in front of him and does exactly what he had threatened him that he would do. And then he throws the flesh and the blood onto Pita's body, and Pita is still deep in meditation. He accepts what is happening without moving. And the Dev sees that he has not moved from his meditation. Then he threatens him again that I'm actually going to bring your middle son and your youngest son both, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with them. And Pita doesn't budge from his meditation, and he's listening to these threats, seeing them happening in front of him. He does not change his demeanor, does not get angry, does not get upset. But when the Dev sees that none of this is having any effect, he finally tells him that I'm going to bring your elderly mother in front of you. Her name was Bhadra. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing with her. And he repeats his threat 2 or 3 times. And Pita begins to think that this terrible person is doing these atrocious things in front of me, and he's already killed three of my children. And now he is threatening to kill my mother, who has suffered so much difficulty in her life for me. So she has given birth to me and has looked after me and has suffered uh, difficulties to raise me. મારે માટે આકરા દુઃખ સહન કરનારી મારી દેવગુરુ સમાન જનનીને. So my mother is like my Dev and Guru. And when this person is threatening to kill her and boil her in front of me, then I should protect my mother and I should go and catch this person. So he loses his concentration, and Pita stands up from his meditation And as soon as the Dev sees that he has been successful in moving Chulnipita from his meditation, he disappears, and the Chulnipita can actually see him flying away in the sky. તે દેવ એકદમ આકાશમાં ઉડી ગયો અને ચૂલની પિતાના હાથમાં માત્ર થાંભલો આવ્યો. So he rushes out to try and prevent this, and all he sees is the Dev flying away, and he just thinks that he's grabbing somebody, and he's actually grabbing a pillar in this Bodhisattva. And Chulnipita is now quite upset, and he shouts out. His mother, who was not far away, wakes up because of the noise that he was making, and she asks him, "Why are you making so much noise?" And Chulnipita explains to her what he had seen, and his mother says, "There has been no person who has come here. Nobody has killed any of your sons, and somebody has probably tried to disturb you from your meditation so that you wouldn't progress very far. And it is obvious that you have broken your meditation and your vow. So now you have to do alochana or prayaschit that you broke your meditation." And his mother tells him that please go back, seek forgiveness for your loss of meditation and your loss of steadfastness in your vows, and carry on with your sadhana. આલોચના કર અને ફરીવાર તેમને સ્વીકારીને જેમ રહેતો હતો તેમ રહે. So go back, accept your vows again, and then carry on with the way you had decided that you would be living your life. And Chulnipita, with humility, accepts what his mother is telling him, and he reconfirms his vows. પોતે તોડેલા નિયમનું પ્રાયશ્ચિત કરી he asked for forgiveness for having broken his vows. તેનો ફરી સ્વીકાર કરી પહેલાની જેમ રહેવા लाग्यो. And towards the end of his life, like Kamdev and like Anand Shravak, he also takes Salnekhana. And at the end of his life, because he has performed his pratimas very well, he is born in Saudharma Devlok, in the particular Dev Viman called Arun Prabh. And in his next life, he will be born in Mahavir Kshetra and go to Moksha. The stories mention that Kamdev Shravak was also born in the same Devlok, in the same Viman. And Anand Shravak, it's also mentioned that all three of them were born in the same Viman in Saudharma Devlok, and all three of them, so far that we know, are in the Saudharma Devlok in that particular Viman. And they all probably died not far from each other because they were all current in the times at the time that Bhagwan Mahavir was around. The next story is about somebody called Suradev. That is quite short as well. And then we've got Chul Satak, which is also quite short. Then there is Gurupati Kund Kolik. Most of these stories from now on are quite short, and we will hear about their practices. Then there is one about Sadal Putra, and Sadal Putra's story is a bit long. So what we will do is next week, we will finish Suradev, Chul Satak, and Gurupati Kund Kolik. And the week after, we will listen to the story of Sadal Putra, and then we'll have two more left. So as far as the narratives about the Shravaks are concerned, that is the end of today's story on Chulani Pita, Gruhapati Chulani Pita. The term Gruhapati means Guru means a house, and Apati means the leader or the owner or the chief. So I presume that these were all very well respected men in the community. They were well respected because they were all very generous and helpful to the people around them. Now, the stories give us some idea about the kind of Shravaks and Shravikas that were around at the time of Bhagwan Mahavir, and similar practices carried on, and they carry on to this day and age. I don't know if anybody recently has actually gone ahead and performed any of these 11 pratimas. I'm not aware, but it's not impossible that somebody might have uh, tried that to an extent, though it could be quite difficult in this day and age. But there are probably quite a lot of Shravaks and Shravikas who have taken the 12 vows, who are practicing them in India, and I'm sure here as well. There are probably some people who are following all the vows of a householder. Now, we want to switch on your videos. I wasn't just asking the Zoom team, I was asking everybody. Any questions? Anybody? This is the picture that is painted about these great Shravaks and the life that they led and what they did towards the end of their life. What does that tell you about the kind of people they were? So these are no ordinary people. During their lives, they've obviously been extremely successful businessmen. They are very well respected in their communities. They are leaders of the society. They have been uh, helpful to a lot of people during their lives, have managed their wealth in such a way that it was progressively more and more, they became quite wealthy. And then, having taken the vows, they decide to limit their activities as business people, as householders, as everything else that they did, that they had done so successfully for this many years. And they begin to take vows to limit all those activities and follow those vows to the letter. And a lot of those vows are actually very detailed and they are very specific to the amount of, say, for example, some of the vows are simple, but the vow to limit the wealth that they have, they would put a limit and then ensure that that limit is adhered to. Now, the limits were not small, probably, but with the kind of punya that they had and the kind of businesses that they were running, it is very likely that their businesses, their wealth would have kept on increasing if they had not put that limit. And to accept that this is the limit that I am going to set myself, and not just in their wealth, but in all their activities in their life, in their eating habits, in the habits of their uh, the number of or amount of materials that they would use uh, in following the path of ahimsa, satya, all the vows, and then advancing their practice is samayik, Disavagasic, Paushadupvas, Atiti Samvibhag, and then towards the end, give up everything and not having the ability to become monks, they would still do the next best thing and live in a Pausatsala alone. What kind of people does, I mean, the picture that is painted, can we actually grasp ourselves the courage, the devotion, the clarity with which these people accepted their vows and followed them? And towards the end of their lives, as we heard, all of them, three of them, took sanlekhana, meaning my life is coming to an end and I'm going to fast myself to death. And in that time as well, there is no difficulty in that. There is no suffering in the sense that they may be physically suffering the pain, but mentally, spiritually, they are at a very high place. Now, it is quite difficult for us to imagine that kind of a state of mind, but do you have other words to paint the picture that I'm trying to paint? Kusumben, you can answer in Gujarati. Anybody can answer in any language that you, Gujarati or English, that's fine.
I think they must have had a really spiritual life, maybe in a monk, in the previous life, maybe. So they had all that punya, so they were able to sort of they carried that through into this life, maybe.
Possible, but that foundation may have come with them. Their punya is with them, but among such great wealth and comfort and happiness and respect that they are enjoying, what it tells us about them is that how easy it was for them to detach themselves from all the trappings of luxury.
Maybe they were not attached to that.
They were not attached to that. And that tells us a lot as to the kind of people they were. Though they were so successful, there is no pride there. There is no uh, sort of pride about their status. So these are no ordinary people, even though they lived according to their wealth, so people would know how wealthy they were not showing off. And they were helping a lot of people, but they were also so happy to give it all up. So that level of detachment that they true that come from some sadhana from a previous life, but you have to teach yourself that mindset. You have to constantly tell yourself against your base instincts, which are directing you towards other things. And I mean, it's easy to take a vow of poverty when you don't have anything. When you've got billions and you say, look, I'm going to give it all up. Okay, it's possible that he's just handed it over to, they'd handed it over to their family, but they were also helping people all along all the time. But restricting how much or what I eat, doing penance on a daily basis, following all the 11 pratimas towards the end of their lives. The depth of that practice is something that if we were to set out to do anything like that, if we can imagine the difficulties that we might have. And I'm not talking about the physical difficulties. Mentally and spiritually, it would be very difficult to prepare ourselves from giving up all those things and just cutting our ties off from society. So this is what they all did. Osut Sarama Jaine Raya, meaning that they have basically become monks, but have got arrangements that would uh, look after their immediate needs of food and uh, basic facilities. That's about it. So the family is not far, but they are basically living a life of a monk towards that end.
Ajitbhai, I think they had absolute self-discipline.
True.
Yeah.
And
And
that comes from,
spiritually, they were so elevated
yeah,
that they could bring themselves to do they had put their mind to.
can we imagine ourselves actually progressing in that, at least some ways in that direction?
Ajitbhai, if they were that had that much discipline, and they were living in as a monk, why didn't they just take the next step and do diksha?
Because there are still some liberties. So it is for a Shravak. The definition of a Shravak is somebody who deeply wants to become a monk, but is unable to do so. Now, they may have felt that they were living almost like a monk, but they were not actually completely living like a monk. So they were still living in their own household. They still had some level of in a Pausatsala, but they would have made arrangements for their food and drink, and they would have had some very basic facilities there in their Pausatsala. So they were still protected to an extent. They were not completely out on the street and going from Upashre to Upashre. So there is some level of comfort that they've chosen because they would have felt it impossible to live, or would have thought that it was not possible for them to live that kind of life. So you're right, but there are lots of Shravaks like that who carry on taking advanced practice, but would not feel that they have the physical stamina to live as a monk or a nun, and may feel that it would be very difficult for them to go to the full extent of becoming a monk and a nun. And I can think of one example that you know very well, who is probably in a similar frame of mind, but the thought would be very prominent, but the decision would have been that maybe it's very difficult for me to proceed that far, but the rest of the life is very similar because there is constant practice there,
Yeah.
day in and day out. So, I mean, to understand that there are those limitations, but these are people like that. So that we are talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
If we You see, what I wanted to try and dig out is that we thought that this level of commitment and this level of practice comes from some sadhana from a previous life. But they've all gone out, listened to Bhagwan Mahavir and accepted these vows. The first steps start with this conviction. And what is the core of that conviction? So when somebody enters into advanced practice as a Jain or even following any other religion, particularly with, say, Jain Dharma, the conviction may be just about the physical process of doing something. So this is a challenge and I want to do it. But for these people, it was much deeper than that. What is their realization that enables them to be so detached? What is the realization? Simple word that we hear all the time, that આ સંસારમાં સુખ નથી. આ મારું સ્વરૂપ નથી. I am currently with a body, but that's not me. I am trapped in this body because of my karmas. My true self is completely free, completely happy, completely in great bliss and with total knowledge. That deep understanding of one's true nature and what that means and how different it is from what one finds oneself in. So people at that level are actually experiencing, or say somebody who has achieved samyaktva, are experiencing the separateness of the soul from the body. They are understanding that they are separate, but also to an extent they are constantly seeing the division. I am currently occupying this body, which is temporary, but I am the soul. I am not the body, and everything else that is around me. All this conviction starts from that, and then it becomes so much easier when you are at that level to begin to abandon and not be attracted to all that your senses are demanding, all that is outside that you've enjoyed, because our attachment to all those things, if you look at our lives and what goes on inside our minds, most of the time we get happy and upset with all the changes that occur on our daily lives. These people would have been so equanimous that nothing would disturb them. And that is similar to what happens to a lot of monks. They are at that level where nothing is disturbing them. And we saw that with Kamdev, Shravak, and Chulnipita, whatever these devs are trying to do to them, they are holding on to this conviction and are completely at peace and happy within themselves. So none or no matter what is going on outside is not disturbing them. We saw today that in Chulnipita, he does lose his cool when the Yaksh or Dev is threatening to kill his mother. But until then, he could hold his own. And what the Devs can do is absolutely lifelike. I mean, they can demonstrate all those things to you and make you experience all those things that we saw with Kamdev Shravak when his body is cut. So that pain is not imaginary, that pain is real. And the pains that we know that, say, Bhagwan Mahavir suffered, we heard the story of Meta Rajmuni as well sometime in the past. All those pains that they suffered were not imaginary, those pains were actual, real. But their awareness of their separateness, that my body is suffering the pain, I am not. And the core understanding and the belief that we should all be striving for is that recognition. And it's called Dehadhyas Bandh Karo or Bhed Gnan ki. Yani Bhed Gnan atle I'm getting to the state of understanding who I am and what is not me or of me. And this is where all sort of advanced practice that will ultimately take us to moksha starts.
Sorry. So is this a test, basically, when the devs come as, like you were saying, when he came to kill his mother, etc.? Is that a test for?
Yeah, so the Dev was testing him. Obviously, in the previous story and today's story, the Devs are so the first story that we heard about Kamdev Shravak, the Dev hears the praise from Indra and feels that the Indra is exaggerating and can a mere human being cannot actually do this. So he comes down to test him. And here this Dev sees that, oh, somebody is now in deep meditation and he seems to be, so they can sense this, that he seems to be advancing in his spiritual practice, and let me go and disturb him. So there are lots of stories like that when devs are quite jealous of people. So some who deliberately come to test to see how firm they are, others who deliberately come to actually disturb and destroy their practice. So in this particular story, Chulnipita, the Dev had come to really destroy that practice. He says, I don't want him to advance that way spiritually. So yes, it is a test. And they go very far. Similarly, like Sangam Dev with Bhagwan Mahavir. And we are talking about not every sadhak suffers this severe kind of punishment from devs and other people. Some sadhaks do. Some sadhaks' journey towards Keval Gnan and Moksha is fairly easy and simple. It all depends on their purva karmas. So different sadhaks, different monks, there are different ways, and not everybody. So I don't know if some of you may have heard in Jain Ramayana that I mentioned last week, there is a particular story which mentions that uh, after Sita had died, she goes to Devlok, and many years later, Ram, after Lakshman's death, later on becomes a monk, and Ram's spiritual practice is advancing very quickly and very well, and it is progressing so well that to people who are watching that, so a lot of devs may be checking or seeing what's happening, and then somebody from Devlok, actually Sita's soul, who is now a Dev, recognizes the speed with which Ram's practice is actually progressing, and she feels that if Ram achieves Keval Gnan now in this life, then he'll be lost to me forever. So that particular soul, Sita, we can call that soul she at that moment, but it is actually a Dev. He says that I don't want to lose him. If he's still around as a Sansari Jeev, I have a hope of meeting him again. So this Dev comes down and tries to disturb Ram from his meditation and his spiritual practice. Because if that is disturbed, then he will lose his progress and he will stop there. He won't go on to achieve Keval Gnan. And this Dev is not going to do anything that will harm this person, in the sense that nothing that would be painful. So she, or the Dev, does what is called Anukud Upsarg. Anukud Upsarg means that it is something that is pleasant, that is very interesting, that reflects some events from the life that has gone, meaning the previous life, and something that is very sort of family oriented. And this Dev is hoping that Ram will get engaged with what she is, or the Dev is showing him, which is all quite pleasant, than some things that he's enjoyed during his life, in the hope that he loses his concentration. So that is called an Anukud Upsarg. What we've heard about Kamdev and Churnipita are upsarg, meaning bad upsargs, but these are Anukud upsargs. Obviously, Ram does not lose his concentration and he achieves Keval Gnan in that life and goes to moksha. But just as an example of Devs come to test them, but also to disturb. So in this particular instance, there is a definite agenda that if he goes beyond, then he is going to go to moksha. And that means he'll be lost to me. So this is somebody who really fully understands religion. So Sita was a very advanced soul, and even she, or the soul, is engrossed in that love for this person and says, look, I don't really want to lose him. And they're not talking about one life. So those are some of the lots of stories like that we hear in our literature. Okay.
Sorry, can I just ask something? So if these devs come down and harm these people or make them lose their concentration, what happens to them? Do they bind karma and then
Obviously, yep.
life they will?
Yeah, they would bind karmas and they would suffer from that in the future. And this is why Bhagwan Mahavir sheds a few tears for Sangam Dev when he finally gives up after 6 months of gross atrocities, all the upsargs that he conducted. Bhagwan Mahavir is feeling so sorry for Sangam that he has been punishing me so much all this time, but he's not concerned about all that he suffered. He's concerned about Sangam, and what is really going to happen to him in the future as a result of all the bad karmas that is accumulated. And Bhagwan Mahavir is so moved by that thought that this person, this soul, is going to suffer so much because of what he has done. And he feels so sorry and moved by it that he sheds a few tears. So that is described in the Kalpasutra and about this particular incident. So yes, those people would be suffering in the future.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more thing. Sorry. In this story, it's actually confusing because they, according to the Shravak, the Dev kills 3 of his children.
That's what he demonstrates or shows. He hasn't actually done it. But as I was saying, they can actually show it. They can actually do it as well. But here he's just testing. That's what I said, that he's testing, and when he wakes up, when he's trying to kill his mother, and she wakes up and says, why are you making so much noise? And he says, well, somebody has been and has killed all my 3 children and was trying to kill you. He says, I'm fine and your children are fine. Nothing has happened.
It was in front of him, so...
Yes, it was in front of him, but the Devs have that kind of power. They can actually do that, but they can also And a lot of the times when they are testing people, they are making them believe they're not actually doing it.
Okay, thanks.
And a lot of the upsargs are like that. They're making they make believe, but they are real. They are like an immersive experience in a three-dimensional movie. You're part of it.
Mm.
There's similar stories. I don't know if you've heard of Narada Muni, who has a similar experience that is described as well in a
Yeah.
different context. Not as an upsarg, but as a different context. And devs have that kind of power. It's very easy for them to manipulate matter.
If they have that kind of power, then eh, because they've got other powers in terms of, I mean, they've got long lives, they've got um, of Dignan, all these things.
Yeah.
They can actually do austerities. I mean, if they so wish to,
They
not
cannot. Because they do not have, even though a lot of the devs are samyaktvi, they understand exactly what is right and wrong. They have so a lot of the great people who are currently in Devlok, they have that full understanding, but they can't decide and say, I'm doing to take a vow to do an upvas today, even though they may not need to eat for 1,000 years. They can still not take a vow. They cannot take any of the vows. They may be celibate for a very, very long time, not have any desires at all for a long time, but they still can't say that I'm going to restrict myself, because the life in Devlok is completely trouble-free most of the time. And those sort of in the higher Devloks, all they are doing most of the time is just meditating, but they can't take a vow. They can't become monks. What they do is, if there are kalyanaks, they go and celebrate, and they do all kinds of different things. They regularly go traveling all over the world, well, universe, really.
but what I don't understand is they in Devlok and Naraklok, both have got like quite a lot of powers. But in Devlok, they can't progress themselves spiritually, and like in Naraklok, like where Shrenik Maharaj is at the moment, he will come out of there and come out to be a Tirthankar in the next life. So it's
Similarly, I mean, there may be people in Devlok who are going to be Tirthankars in their next lives. Many.
no, but at the moment, like Shrenik Raja went to Naraklok because of um, the karmas he's bound.
Yeah.
But although he's suffering, but he's also, I suppose, he's doing penance and progressing spiritually. So
He's
if
stable spiritually, he's
Naraklok,
progressing, but his Tirthankar Nam Karma has already been formed. The Tirthankar Nam Karma gets formed and firmed up in the third life before the life as a Tirthankar. So that is already established.
yes,
That
but
is
he's also progressing from
yeah,
the standpoint where he was
yeah.
uh,
So would be a lot of
thousands of years ago.
yeah, true. So would be a lot of the devs who are still enjoying all the trappings of Devlok. A lot of them are still progressing spiritually, but
Even though they
not
take a
at,
while.
but they can't go beyond the limits of their particular life.
Yes, I understand that, but even though they don't take a while, like when we do some things, like say for example, during Ambil, you do the fasting, but you don't take a vow, then it's not as steadfast as when you do. So if they can't take those kind of vows, how can their progress be measured in terms of if they can't do that? I'm a bit confused.
See, the reason I think your confusion, Sandeep, is that you're thinking that progress goes from one life to another life, and then that is it is linear. A lot of our progress may start with many, many lives beyond before. So, for
Yes.
example, let me just give you a simple example. In the Many of you may not have heard this story, but there is a particular uh, fantastic narrative called Samraditya Kevali Charitra, which is the story of two lives together. I mean, we are 21, we are about 13 minutes past 9. Let me start off with that story next week and just remind me of your question. How can people progress? And what the point that I want to make is that what triggers progress, and that progress may start at one point and may go on over ups and downs over many lives, but the trigger or the catalyst for progress are many and varied, and that is something that we need to understand, because there are opportunities to trigger progress, to catalyze progress, to sort of start off a reaction. And that is often what would have happened to a lot of us at some point, some brief moment of enlightenment or awakening has started off our progress, and then we gradually moved forward in that direction. So let me start off with that story next week. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's finish now. Jinagna viruddh kai bolyo tesme manusan kaya kare tasme chami dukudam. If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our Tirthankar Paramatma's Guru Bhagwans and Dharma, I ask for forgiveness. Sarvamangalamangalyam Sarkalyan Karanam Pradhanam Saradharmanam Jainam Jayati Sahasranam. Thank you all very much, and thank you for engaging. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajitbhai.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Meera, Darshana.
Thank you.
पढ़